What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. Will, first of all, I'm Connor O'Gara. You are Will Ogburn. We are once again live in Dallas, SEC Media Days. We are at our Airbnb. Apologies for the Dallas rush hour. Yeah, we'll call it rush hour. Rush hour traffic that you might hear during the recording of this podcast. But we have a lot to be able to get to today. Will, we're through 3 of 4 days. This is the last pod that we record from Media Days. Are you exhausted yet? Do you have anything left in the tank?
I feel like it just depends, right? Everything's situational, right? So I feel like day one, I was in here, I was at every media scrum, I was like getting video photos of every guy I could see, I was asking everybody a question. Now I'm more like, all right, wait, hold on, be cognizant here. You're not on deadline. You're just asking these people a question to like help other people out, but what they need is to get to their deadline. So I'm just like trying to, really where I'm at as far as, because like I said, I'm not a writer, I'm a little bit different. I'm trying to ask like thoughts I've had kind of bumping around and be like, okay, does this make sense basically? And everyone's been really cool. So yeah, I think for me, I've been kind of more laid back, but it's hard to be laid back on a day like today, man. There's so many big names. There was
a ton of big names. By the way, if you see any of our great social content this week, Will has been knocking that out of the park for us. Follow us on Instagram, Saturday Down South, in case you do not already. Yes, big names today. Today felt like the biggest headliner day because, let's be honest, it started with Alabama. Texas was involved today. The fact that we had very new situations for both programs. It was something that we had talked about coming into this week. Starting off the day, let's start with the Kalen DeBoer Alabama era beginning. Think about this, Will. For the first time since 2006, that was before Urban won a title at Florida. That was before the SEC started its run of national championships. For the first time since 2006, someone not named Nick Saban was representing Alabama at SEC Media Days.
Yeah. And I mean, I vividly, obviously, remember the 2007 season. Shout out to our boy Hester, where it felt like, I'm going to be honest, it kind of felt like the Oklahoma we were winning the breakup, right? So that's the advice I'd give everybody is at least give it a couple years because I felt like I was at home in Louisiana still. I hadn't moved yet. I was laughing. So point being, yeah, I think that DeBoer is, like, people are always going to have their questions of him, but I think he's kind of handled it. He's kind of crushed it so far, I'll be honest.
With Nick Saban in the same room.
Yeah.
At SEC Media Days, because in case you forgot, he is an analyst now. That is what he's going to be doing for ESPN, for SEC Network. He's going to be doing ABC stuff as well, I'm sure. And we had this very, very surreal start to Kalen DeBoer being the face of this program. And for those who are looking to poke holes in him and say that he's not going to be able to do this, he's not going to be able to do that, we didn't get answers to any of those questions today. The only thing that we might have seen was, does he get defensive when he gets asked about Nick Saban, when he gets asked about replacing the greatest coach of all time? He doesn't. And whoever was going to replace Nick Saban was going to have to handle that massive, gigantic elephant in the room, pun very much intended. And Kalen DeBoer so far passes that test. Talking with Alabama players, everything that you hear from those big three, which I say big three because that's truly what they are. I guess Malachi Moore's not as big. But big three in terms of the guys who returned for this program who did not hit the portal in that 30-day window. Jalen Milroe, Tyler Booker, and Malachi Moore were all here representing Alabama today. And if you talk to them, you get this sense that they didn't really have an eyebrow raised for DeBoer. It wasn't like he was the stepdad trying to come in and be the dad, which is a weird thing to say, but it kind of makes sense. It feels like they, at least from everything I gathered today, they were going to have a respect for whoever replaced Nick Saban. The simple act of doing that, signing up to do that, when we know that coaches didn't do that, despite what some might want to tell us, there were some who didn't want to sign up to do that. And Kalen DeBoer did. And I think he's taken everything very well in stride. Tyler Booker, funniest moment of the day was probably Tyler Booker talking about the Nick Saban prediction that we talked about the other day of Texas and Georgia to be playing in the SEC championship. And he was asked, like I asked him, like, what'd you think about Saban, not even picking you guys to get to the SEC championship? He's like, well, Coach Saban would probably be mad at me if I listened to external factors. And he used to always say, if you listen to people that are, living in their mom's basement, like, what are you doing? Essentially, like, he's out here, he's out just playing golf all day. Why would I listen to him?
Yeah.
Turning of the page.
Coin flip of like, who's this goober? Like, I'm just following your advice, Coach.
It really is. I love me some Tyler Booker.
Mm-hmm.
He might be my favorite person that I've spoken to this week. We had him on the pod a little over a year ago after he finished his true freshman season. And I wondered why Alabama signed off on having a true freshman essentially speak to the media at all. I didn't go through Alabama. It was actually through one of the camps that he was doing. But I remembered thinking after that interview, oh yeah, Tyler Booker kind of gets it. And he's a fantastic face of the program, which I guess you could say also belongs to Jalen Milroe. But, Will, did you get this sense that Alabama players had a different mindset than last year, where last year we talked all about how, oh my gosh, the disrespect. I didn't really hear as much of that this year. It was more about this new era and moving on from Saban.
Yeah, I think you absolutely nailed that. I think those three players were kind of in a way, like the brain trust that held the whole roster together, right?
Yeah.
And that goes with the great culture they have over there at Alabama. Goes to the fact that even that Nick Saban had a plan, right? And we've heard throughout the months since then, kind of how that plan got out and how he enacted it. But I'm not obviously saying they would do this, but if Alabama had hired Deion Sanders, there was only but so much that brain trust was going to allow them to do, because the quote we kept hearing is, it really wasn't necessarily pro DeBoer quotes. It was more about pro Alabama, pro the team, pro the roster, and I think that's by design, because if you buy in, it's the same thing you tell recruits, right? If you buy into a coach, he could leave. If you buy into a program, that's a turner.
I kept thinking today about how weird it would be if Saban's successor was just Much. If he was just Much. You know who I'm talking about. There are coaches in this sport who are Much.
Mm-hmm. PJ Fleck.
PJ Fleck's
PJ Fleck.
First one that I thought of. You couldn't have hired someone who was Much to do that job. Even someone that's established in this sport, because I don't think they would have been able to handle a lot of the fact that, I don't want to call it, it's not a cloud that Nick Saban has hanging over the program, but the Nick Saban aura that will hang over Alabama football for years. That's not going to go away. He still has an office there. And for DeBoer to step up on this stage for the first time, a stage that's...
He wasn't the step coach. He was the coach that stepped up.
Yeah. Where's that from originally?
It was a guy wearing a shirt about being a stepdad, the dad that stepped up.
That's pretty good. I like that. That's like a Target shirt, isn't it? Yeah, I feel like that is. But yeah, he is taking on this kind of like strange stepdad type role, although he's got a job to do. His time at Alabama will not be defined by how he comes across at media days. I'll say that. Don't think that's really bold. His time will be defined by how he handles failure. And what does it look like when you obviously lose that first game at Alabama and everybody's picking every decision apart? What does it look like if he has a season where he misses the playoff? And does he have guys that hit the portal window? Does he have guys that leave and then talk smack about him? Like, we're so early in this process that nobody can look into the crystal ball and see that. All we can do is go based on what we've heard so far, what we've seen so far. And to this point, he's done everything possible that an Alabama fan could have hoped for and an Alabama hater could have rooted against.
Yep, I fully agree. And I'd say this too, like for this entire time since the Bush administration, as we would say.
W, which one? HW or just W?
W.
Okay.
W,
yeah.
Right? Since, Saban took over, right? The whole thing is, there's trouble in wherever, right? There's trouble in Gainesville, there's trouble in Knoxville, whatever it is. There has not been trouble in Tuscaloosa until the potential of Nick Saban leaving. And I think that their whole plan has been geared away from, avoiding trouble in Tuscaloosa. And I think they've done everything to kind of shield from that. So, yeah, I think exactly what you just said. I mean, and I'll say this to you, a little peel behind the onion, right? Because you're used to this stuff. I'm not. You guys see, right, like you, the listener at home, you see these quotes from the quote graphics from Saturday Down South, ESPN, Bleacher Report, and it'll be some, quote from media days. I didn't really factor in how many times people have to ask similar questions to get that one good quote. Goodness, we heard so many South Dakota questions, so many replacing Nick Saban questions, trying to get the best answer, and they eventually got those answers, right? But just DeBoer getting peppered over and over and what's the difference between Alabama and South Dakota? What's the difference between Alabama and Washington? And it's like, bro, what do you? It was kind of like a la Greg Sankey. Like, I can only tell you, so many things until I say the weather, and then you freak out about that.
Well, that's shout out our friend Barry Trammell, listener of the show, legend of the game, Tulsa World. Barry asked the question, like, you've never had a job south of Carbondale, like what's Carbondale, Illinois, which actually that's Southern Illinois where my aunt went to college. The answer, it's like I sweat a lot. it's really, really hot. Which, that's part of the adjustment. But ultimately, this is about being able to coach football at an extraordinarily high level, which he clearly realizes. I lied before. I said that Tyler Booker talking about Saban as a skeptic was the funniest quote of the day. The funniest quote of the day was actually what Tyler Booker said to the next round, and he's like. They asked him if he had a chance to play the new college football video game, which has been a really popular topic of discussion this week. We'll get into that a little bit with Luther Burden, I think, as well in a minute here. And they asked him like if he had played. He's like, "Oh yeah, I actually got a chance to go to a local Boys and Girls Club in Tuscaloosa, and I played 2 games and I won both of them by 35 points." And he said it with a straight face.
Cardell Jones is back. We're back in 2014, buddy.
I love it, dude. I love it. Okay, if you're not, you can't just be. There are defining lines here. You're not letting anybody win. Nobody's giving anybody any free passes with this new video game. That's what I've learned so far. Take no prisoners mindset for those who have been able to play it. But yes, Alabama's day certainly was noteworthy and had a very, very different vibe to it. Do we want to talk about Texas and Oklahoma? Yeah, let's talk about Texas and Oklahoma, Will.
Sure.
Let's start with Texas.
How are they preparing for the SEC?
How are they preparing for the SEC? Gosh, if there was a nickel for every time you heard that, if there was a drinking game for every time you heard that, you would be mighty blitzed. The Texas presence was real significant. Yeah. Real significant. I think the biggest crowd so far at Media Days was for Quinn Ewers.
Yep. I fully agree.
I think Ewers' crowd was even bigger than Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, I mean, because I was kind of working, and it's like a 20-minute or a 30-minute dead period between the coach talks and when the players talk, and you kind of look like a goober if you just stand there for 30 minutes. So I was trying to get some work done. Not that it's the wrong thing to do. In this case, it was exactly the right thing to do because everybody else I've been able to finesse my way in. I'm like a little bit taller, so I can kind of get over. I couldn't even get a photograph of Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, even if there were too many people standing on chairs to get photographs of Quinn Ewers. Whereas with Milroe, I guess you could at least do that a little bit. Plus, you could see that the chain that Milroe was wearing from space. It was huge.
Yeah.
Ewers is so much more likable than I thought he was going to be coming into college.
Yeah.
Isn't that, I feel that I've done a 180 on his mindset where we always talked about how much we loved the arm talent. We thought it was special to watch how easily the ball just popped out of his hand. And the biggest 180 that I've probably done on him overall is he actually seems like a guy who's built for this. Now, that doesn't mean he's necessarily built to win a national championship and to run through the SEC. Nick Saban, nobody is saying that Texas is going to dominate the SEC. But I do think that Sark kind of talked about some of the points of why Ewers has had this transformation. And I just think that Quinn Ewers comes into this season in rarefied air, where he is the guy who everybody still remembers how decorated he was as a recruit. And yet, there is still at least some skepticism about him.
And yet, the first question asked to Steve Sarkisian was about Arch Manning. I've never eye-rolled so hard in my life. Bro, way to not kind of embarrass the family. Is we're trying to welcome Texas. It's how about your backup quarterback, Sark?
I was actually going to ask an Arch Manning question, and then I stopped because he did Sark brought up having depth at every position, including quarterback. And he's right, because Ewers has missed multiple games each of the last 2 seasons. Malik Murphy got the start last year. Hudson Card was the guy, and then he kind of wasn't the guy. The Casey Thompson thing happened at one point. But the entire conversation, thankfully, wasn't just about Arch. I thought Sark came off pretty understanding of how big of a deal this is. He talked about having a police escort to SEC Media Days. That was the thing that Texas and Oklahoma both very much agreed on was oh my God, this is a huge deal. 1,200 media members are credentialed to be at this thing.
Jeez.
It is, if you have a radio station in Southeast Alabama, you are still talking about Kentucky football and Texas A&M football. That is the unique difference of this conference, and they certainly appeared to see it up close. Hearing Sark reference how important this was, and seeing that this is somebody that has great perspective, having been in the SEC already as a coordinator from his time at Alabama. I got a question. Do you believe what Quinn Ewers said, or I should say what he interpreted from his dad? Quinn Ewers said in the auxiliary media room that his dad told him growing up that the A&M Texas rivalry was bigger than the Red River rivalry. Needless to say, I think Oklahoma fans might have been a little bit upset about that. Like,
yeah.
What do you mean you don't hate us as much? He said his dad said that. He wasn't saying that. His dad said that.
That's an all-time like football guy move, where just be like, "Oh, somebody else." I'm just repeating what I heard. Yeah, I mean, I'll say this, man. The description that Sark gave of the Red River rivalry, that guy might be a writer in the next life. The way he was talking about, like, the way the locker rooms are set up, the way the crowd breaks down, the way the corn dog smell.
Yes.
I was like, I want to go to this game now. Like, what's going on?
The State Fair, just sitting right there. And we talked about the Chris Del Conte quote that he had at the SEC spring meetings a couple of months ago, where he said, hey, Iron Bowl's great, cocktail party's great, but the Red River, let me tell you about this. And that upset SEC fans to hear that. I do think it is extremely unique. I would absolutely love to go. It is on my college football bucket list near the top. But you're right. The description that he was giving, I was kind of like, dang, man. At the same time, if you gave me a Wright Thompson description of the cocktail party or something like that, or if Ryan McGee did an essay on the cocktail party, I'd be right there, and I'd have goosebumps thinking about that. Because it's talking season, and all I want to do is be able to watch football. But yeah, the Sark presence was very much felt. He had the burnt orange jacket going, came in with a lot of swagger, as he should. As he should.
It upsets me how sick they look. I told you that, like today, I was like, oh my gosh, like the way the burnt orange and the white contrast, the way he just said, hook him when he walks off. It's like, I get it. Now, again, we talk about their history, but this is the present. You know what I'm saying? And one thing that's really cool, too, that he talked about that I had not registered, right, because they were in the Big 12, all their coordinators are staying together. This is their fourth year together.
All 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, coordinator continuity is a big deal for why Texas has been able to do this. And, eventually that time is going to come, because if you're really good, it always comes. It came for Alabama. It came for Georgia. It, of course, is going to come for any elite program that does this for more than 1 year. But it is part of the reason why I love Texas so much in the regular season. Why I feel like they're going to be able to navigate this favorable year one schedule in the SEC really, really well. And I'd be lying if I said Quinn Ewers wasn't a big part of that. He is. I wouldn't pick him to win the Heisman Trophy just because of the injury history. I don't necessarily know for certain that with all of these new receivers, Sark did say that they have more receiver depth than they have ever had, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's probably because last year, A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy, those guys played a lot. I mean, they were on the field like all the time. And this year, they think they're gonna be able to have a lot more depth. Time will tell. But I think that we are still a little bit skeptical of the Texas offense because they haven't had this 2020 Alabama-like group. Remains to be seen if they're going to be able to do that. I don't think they're going to have to get to the places that they – let me take that back. They probably would have to have an offense like that if they're going to win a national championship. I don't necessarily think that it has to be a historically great offense for them to go 12-0. I think they can be really good. I think they can be one of the top 15 offenses in the country. They can be top 20 in both categories and go 12-0 with that schedule. I don't think that's that far-fetched.
Yeah, I think, too, okay, so this certainly affects Oklahoma more than Texas, because Oklahoma's coming from decades of all Big 12, all Big 12, all Big 12, at, all these different positions, and Texas hasn't honestly had a lot of that. So, getting players that are all SEC caliber players and are judged against SEC competition is these guys already have the rep coming in. So I did want to make that point really quick about Oklahoma, where it's okay, I think that's going to be a bigger adjustment for them not having all those accolades. But I think for Texas and for Sarkisian, who they've already beaten Alabama, it's I feel like they will, like, the way that they're judged is going to be different because, you can't just coast your way to Big 12, first team all Big 12. It's going to be a lot easier to, like, really see what your guys are made of on a week-to-week basis. And I think that's for Sarkisian, who, like I said, had their best team since Mac Brown beat Alabama last year. Right now, he's excited about that.
I kind of love that Oklahoma beat Texas last year, just from a content perspective, making this interesting to talk about, because Texas fans can claim, well, we're the one, we made it to the college football playoff last year. We beat Alabama this way. And I would say, Oklahoma, the reason that you're not talked about in the way that Texas is being talked about coming into the SEC is because when was the last time you had a victory like that? When was the last time you did something? And they could push back by saying, we beat Texas last year. We beat the team that did that. What do you mean? What are you talking about? And there's discourse there, and I think that's fun. What there is, I don't think there's actually as much discourse as the average person would think. There is not that much discourse about horns down. There's not.
Yeah.
I asked Venables about that on Tuesday. And I actually think Oklahoma is the best person to ask, like the best group of people to ask about this, because Texas fans don't care about horns down as much as everybody thinks they do. They do not. There have been high-profile people that have been upset by horns down.
That's what it is. It's like 4 or 5 key quotes. I think you nailed that. And it's the administration running the Big 12 as they were getting accused of on Monday. Yeah.
And last year, the Big 12 makes the decision, horns down will be penalized. In the SEC, horns down will not be penalized in that way.
Imagine they do that and they still leave. I mean, I'd be so mad if I was the Big 12. Like, I'm treating you special. I'm giving you your own network. I'm saying you can't do your little thing, and you're still out of here, dog.
Imagine if Texas had, because obviously it was 2 years already in the making of them leaving for the SEC. But imagine if they had heard the Big 12 say that and they're like, oh, this is Longhorn Network all over again. We're coming back.
Yeah.
But that's not how Texas feels. Texas thinks, okay, Texas gets upset about people thinking that they get mad about it.
Yep.
And that's a frustrating thing. I've had people that say to me, you look really mad. And I'll respond with, no, I'm not mad, but I'm mad that you think that. Yeah, right? I am mad at the sun. I'm a pale Irish guy. What can I say? But I'm mad that you're assuming that. Don't assume that. And so we talked about this, and it was, in my opinion, a worthy question to ask Oklahoma, should this be penalized? Should it ever be penalized? There were non-responses from Danny Stutzman, who you talked to, Jackson Arnold, who just basically gave like a flat no, like I don't really want to get into that. And then Venables kind of said, like, if it's going to be penalized, we're going to have to abide by that. He actually at first asked me during the game, like, do you think it should be penalized during the game? And I was like, yeah. And then I remembered, well, he last year at that game had the horns down going afterwards. And there's pictures on the USA Today wire that I used for that exact story where he's got his daughters around him and he's just throwing the horns down. And so maybe he's talking about that of like, would that be a finable offense? No. But the way this is going to be called moving forward is just, it's the taunting penalty. Now, what is taunting and what's not? There will be some room for interpretation. John McDade tried, the SEC coordinator of officials explained kind of what that would look like, what those scenarios would be. If you're doing it in somebody's face, as Will takes off his credential, he's no longer a Big J. If I'm going up to you and doing that right in your face, I guess that's a penalty. But I loved the John McDade description of, could you do this at a mall without context? He's right.
Yeah.
He's exactly right. You could do the gator chomp at a mall and nobody's going to look at you.
Yeah.
Who goes to malls anymore? I don't know. But you could do that at a mall and it would be fine. Could you throw up a middle finger at the mall? No, you couldn't do that. So we've reached this place now where I think there's at least an understanding of what horns down is in terms of the offense, the taunting. But all it's going to take is one horns down taunting penalty that's borderline for everybody to say, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. That day is coming.
Yeah, and like whenever we talked about it, I was like, I could compare it to the gator chomp, as you just did, right? Which is like, yeah, like let's just imagine that LSU was being Florida, right? And if they were to do the gator chomp kind of at the cameras, at whatever, that's one thing. But if you like walked up to another player and just started gator chomping them, that's taunting. And I think that's the mall thing is even better.
Yeah, it's like, the Tebow example that I always provide, against Oklahoma in the national championship, you go up to them right in their face, and Tebow's, a Gator, so he should have been able to do that. But
Right.
The way that this is going to be called, though, I don't think will be as controversial as it was when they were in the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Bowman said, the Oklahoma safety talked about how, no, it shouldn't be penalized, and if you let that, a gesture like that impact you, you probably shouldn't be playing football.
Facts.
He's right. I see no problem with that whatsoever. So a lot of discussion about horns down. It's worth discussing, though, because if you're going to get penalized 15 yards for doing anything in this conference, we should probably have a good idea of what that looks like. And I feel like we actually do after this week, and hopefully there's no murkiness about it.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about Tennessee? Let's talk about Tennessee, Will. I think that Josh Heupel, if he could just live the most boring life as a head coach, outside of like winning a national championship, but if everything else can just be perfectly boring, he would be so happy.
Yep.
He did not bring Nico Iamaleava here. Asked him about that. It was not necessarily and I asked him like why he wasn't here, because if he's going to be the face of the program, if he's going to be the guy who is as decorated as Peyton Manning was once upon a time, as a recruit, then sooner or later he's going to face the media and he's going to talk to people. Mm-hmm. And how much does that matter in the grand scheme of things? Not much at all. But I did think it was an interesting move not to bring him when Oklahoma brought Jackson Arnold, and he's in the exact same spot as Nico. Started in the bowl game, now, former 5-star, entering that red shirt freshman year, whatever you want to call it. And so I do think that Josh Heupel lives in this world in which being boring is perfectly fine. Not bringing James Pierce here, even though all the NFL draft people are already all over him as an edge rusher, and he just wants to be as forgettable as possible. And I think Tennessee has welcomed that with such open arms, and they don't mind that one bit.
Josh Heupel, when he was at UCF and when he got the Tennessee job, one of the reasons why I was a little bit skeptical of him is when I see him, I find myself going like, buddy, and like when he first, like one of his first questions, right? So exactly to your point, right? He stands up, he like does a pretty good like kind of opening statement preamble. He has like a little bit of a cold, and you could tell he's trying everything to just not mess up, and not generate a headline. And he accidentally called Barry Trammell, our new friend, the Grand Wizard of Oklahoma media.
I talked to Barry about that afterwards. I was like, of all the things to say, man. For those who don't know, maybe you didn't know, I didn't know immediately when I heard that. Just Google it and you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's not a term of endearment, especially in the South. And I felt so bad for him because, of course, he played quarterback at Oklahoma. And you could just see, like, Josh Heupel is, like, kind of getting ready. Like, all right, guys, remember to be nice to the Oklahoma people. Remember, don't be too nice, though. And just represent Tennessee, da-da-da. And, for, like, Barry Trammell is, like, kind of the Oklahoma guy. But, yeah, I mean, that's just, he's actually kind of a likable guy. Is, like, what I'm realizing about Heupel is he's kind of boring, but he's also like humble, and he just seems like regular, like I've never felt so bad for a coach at a podium at that moment. It was like, oh, I know you didn't mean to do that, and I know you're trying to be to not create headlines, Do
you think he actually was told afterwards by Tennessee SID Bill Martin, hey man, we're gonna have to walk that one back at some point? Haven't seen any sort of, I don't think he's going to do a public apology. He's probably just hoping that people like us won't get in front of microphones and talk about it, but I guess it's too late for that. But yeah, Tennessee, it felt like so much of the Josh Heupel conversation was centered around Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And it made me that much more excited for that game. I cannot wait for that game, for those two teams to be able to play in Norman, the reunion. I don't think Heupel's going to add anything, to that. He's not going to necessarily make it anything externally that it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
But it's a legit fun storyline, this reunion. And it's something that we talked about when Trey Wallace came on the show a couple months ago, of what that relationship looks like. And it certainly, for the Oklahoma media contingent who was there, that was what he was going to get asked about. That's the most interesting thing about Josh Heupel, is the Oklahoma side of it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, and this is, I promise you, this is not slander, but it's kind of wild that that's their last national championship winning quarterback.
Yeah. Gosh, it really is.
Yeah.
Because you always forget that Sam Bradford didn't technically win one.
Yeah, his team got major righted.
You obviously wins the Heisman Trophy and gets to a national championship, but you forget that eluded those those post year 2 Bob Stoops? Yeah, year 2 Bob
Stoops.
That's
the crazy thing is, I mean, this was like, what, 2000? So I was a wee lad, but like I would assume he almost was looking like a Kirby Smart type trajectory. You go and you win so early as far as Stoops, and then he kind of flips it and becomes like this like elder statesman, almost like a Tom Izzo type thing, Stoops, where it's like, okay, you win early and you're almost there. But yeah, I mean, it's so therefore it's almost like in a way, not I'm gonna say 70% of it, but almost the way that Herschel was viewed with Georgia, where you were the symbol of this title, and now you're coaching for Tennessee, and that used to not matter because Tennessee was in the SEC. You're proud of your guy. You're probably rooting a little bit for Tennessee because that's your guy. I mean, that's like if Joe Burrow in 30 years is the head coach at, like, I don't know, Texas or something.
It's always weird, the relationship with alma maters, because feelings get hurt easily.
Yeah,
they really do. It's kind of like families. Feelings can a grudge that you might have with a friend hits differently than if it's with your sibling or with your parent or something like that. It just does. And I am so interested in the way that this is going to play out. And I think Oklahoma and Tennessee are jockeying for position in the SEC. They're in similar conversations with the way that we're talking about them. I feel like I've been asked the question about who's the dark horse playoff contender in the SEC, and a lot of people will say Tennessee, and I've kind of also I've added Oklahoma to that conversation. And I do think that those two teams have just such a pivotal matchup ahead, and it was interesting seeing them speak at SEC Media Days on the same day. Let's talk Florida.
Oh, wait, really quick on that. Venables is an Oklahoma grad, right?
He is an Oklahoma grad.
So that means we have 3 Oklahoma grads and 2 guys from South Dakota as SEC head coaches.
How does that happen?
I have no idea.
Isn't that wild?
Heupel's one of each, to be fair. But, like, yeah, Levy, Venables, Heupel, Oklahoma grads, and then DeBoer and Heupel are from South Dakota. Yeah. What are the odds of that? Yeah.
It's just so much Oklahoma conversation, too, with Levy as well. So if it feels like we're talking a lot about Oklahoma, that's kind of why. Those are a lot of the angles that we've been talking about this week. Yeah, it's a really good point. The Florida Billy Napier segment of today was, I don't want to say it was hard to listen to, but
I had a great time.
Look, if you're a Florida fan, you're defending Billy Napier. He said the word different 6 times during his time in the main media area.
Like 2 Chainz.
That's a thing that I don't know that you do.
I'm different. Yeah, I'm different. It's like 10 years old, man.
Right over my head. Not my genre. But the Billy Napier defense is it's a bit of blind faith. It really is. Kept talking about how we're going to be different in this way. He touted the fact that they have 35, I think it is, new players, but they're also 4th in the SEC in Bill Connolly's percentage of returning production, which you brought up, which is kind of like, oh, you look at that and go, that's strange. There's portal stuff that gets factored into that as well. And how they're going to be different by overhauling their nutrition program. When he said that, my ears perked up. And I knew that they had made those some changes internally. They got a new strength coach. I'd forgotten about the whole, like, oh, yeah, they hired a new nutritionist. But it was weird hearing that going into year 3, because all we heard about when Billy started was this plan, the support system. They're going to do it the right way. They're going to train harder. They're going to recruit harder. They're going to do all these things to make sure that the end of the Dan Mullen era doesn't repeat itself. And for a coach going into year 3 to be talking about how different things are about to be, it is strange. I'll give Billy credit for making some adjustments. The Joe Houston edition as the game changer coordinator. He's going to be able to be on the field now with this new analyst thing, right? Which is, take that for what it is, TBD. All it'll take is 2 number 3s going on the field at the same time for a return, for us to think that that's still a position he should have hired a bit more seriously, but TBD again. And hearing him use that word repeatedly, different. 3 consecutive losing seasons, 2 of which under him. If you're believing in him, it's blind faith. Florida players aren't even doing the thing where they're like, yeah, like we think everybody's wrong about us, blah, blah, blah. They're kind of acknowledging what's out there with this schedule. And they're like, it's up to us to like prove people wrong, which I think is slightly different than the everybody's wrong about us, they're not giving us enough respect. Florida hasn't earned any respect.
Yeah.
There's no room for interpretation there. You can't lose 5 in a row to end the season and then come on this stage with the 16 team SEC and say we deserve more respect. No, you don't. You don't yet. And I think that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And it was interesting seeing such few media members flock to those Florida areas for those player representatives. Graham Mertz had a good amount of people over by him, but I didn't really think Montreal Johnson or Shamar James had a lot of people around them. And our colleague Derek Peterson was like, dang, isn't that kind of weird? See Florida have player representation here, and it's kind of, man, you look over there and think that was, like a bad year at Mississippi State or something. It was very strange.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because, so with Napier, we have been on the same page of, give the guy time, he has a plan. And, even before he walked in the media room, Ross Dellinger had posted the quote. I think he got him outside of it and was like, how do you think it's going? He's like, yeah, we're on schedule. And then to your point, he, steps up in front of the podium and says, dog, we're changing everything.
Kinda, yeah. They bring in a new DC. They bring in Roberts from Auburn, who, look, TBD if that's going to work out with Austin Armstrong, what that working relationship looks like. Mm-hmm. I'm not sold on that group being significantly better. I am much more sold on Graham Mertz being significantly better than what I thought he was going to be at this time last year. Fully admit that, but at
that's
the same
the crazy thing is that Mertz has been significantly better than we thought. I think,
and they still went 5-7,
and he probably will likely get better again just based on how things work. I mean, I don't think it'll get worse because his turnovers are so weird. It's not like he had a bunch of it's anyway, so point being, it's if I told you, it's if you're a Florida fan, I told you this is what Graham Mertz was going to be in year 1.
Yeah.
And year 2, we're poised for an even bigger, we're maybe not all SEC because the team won't be very good, but statistically he could be. It's yeah, but this team is part of that's the schedule too, and I do kind of feel for them in that way because that was the thing we talked about with give them 2 or 3 years. Well, year 3 is going to be survive, which is because of the schedule.
If Florida had Texas's schedule, Florida had Mizzou's schedule or Ole Miss's schedule, there would be some people saying, 8-4? I think that's in play.
If Florida had the same schedule from last year, how many games would you pick them for?
That's tough. Because are the teams the same?
It would be the same. It would be these teams.
Oh, it's just running it back.
Teams. Yeah.
I'd have to really go through it.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Because that's good.
I was going to say, Billy kept talking. He said, how they're close. Mm-hmm. They're close. They feel like they're right there. And Matt Baker pointed this out. Florida hasn't had this bad luck of close games not going their way.
Yep.
Under Billy Napier, they are 4-5 in one-score games. They were 1-2 last year. They only had 3 one-score games last year.
Yeah.
They didn't really have a lot of these close games. I don't really know where that was quite coming from. I think there are teams that had way more close games.
Billy called Scott Frost. He was like, "How'd you get that extra year?"
Oh God. That's a team that had close one-score games.
They sure did. That's why I got the extra year.
It always makes me worried, though, when I hear that. Of a coach with a losing record who says, we're right there, a couple of things here or there, and I get it. It's kind of all you have to say. It just doesn't make me believe in you.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being skeptical of Florida coming into this year. I have them going 6-6. I don't necessarily have this being a year in which Billy Napier quiets all the doubt because the schedule is just far too daunting.
Yeah.
Players acknowledge it. Players acknowledge that the schedule is there. But I'm not. It's not like I heard what Billy said about the nutrition program and how they added 500 pounds of muscle and then had 500 pounds of lean mass that they lost.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. We were talking about this with Derek Peterson, who our guy, I lifted with him yesterday, and oh my God, I'm not on that level. I'm not on Derek's level. And we were trying to go through the math of 125 scholarship players.
That would have been a good podcast. Just the three of us. So I used to be a lifter compared to you guys. You know what I'm saying? I'm relapsing too. But we're wait, well, the big guys have to lose the weight. The small guys got to gain the weight. How did you come up with these round numbers?
125 scholarship players.
Right.
But it was such a small time frame that Billy gave of this weight was from January into April with this new nutrition program.
They say these word problems in school are going to catch up with you. When the train is leaving from this station.
I was doing this. We sat down and did it. We're all right, so that's 8 pounds. Okay, that's not that crazy, but still, I don't know. So anyways, they're doing different things in that way as well. They're even forcing players to be able to log breakfast and lunch, which I don't know why you weren't doing that before. That seems like an obvious prerequisite to being able to play big-time college football, is kind of tracking those meals a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's different. I don't know that it means the results on the field will be different.
You have watched and attended way more of these than me. Does it feel like this one's more... I know that it's somber because of the Kiffin stuff, but I was kind of expecting, particularly from Billy is why I'm saying this, kind of like a more brash, bolder personalities.
Never.
It feels like it's very flat, you know?
We've been saying this since Spurrier left the SEC. Since Spurrier, and maybe Les Miles as well, who would occasionally just give us these weird sound bites. Mike Leach, of course, the late Mike Leach, who was one word opening statement and then just get right into it. Yeah, there is that. There is, like, people think Lane is that person. Lane's not really that person. I don't know how many times I have to say this to people.
Yeah.
Lane is kind of over it. He's a lot better with Twitter fingers, much to the chagrin of Jeff Levy, who does not seem to be a fan of Lane trolling him on social media, which is fun for the rest of us. But you're right. There is not that, because there's so much more training that goes into this stuff. There's so much more scrutiny, and maybe the fact that the event continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger, it's tougher for these coaches to really look out there and say something like that. Sometimes some of the best quotes come out of the auxiliary press room.
Yep.
Like the Sark quote about how he said Arkansas fans hate Texas more than they like themselves. It's like, buddy, you are not making any friends by saying stuff like that.
It's like Pac-12 After Dark, or like Date Mike. Like, he was in there talking about, we're humble, we come into the SEC, we want to earn everybody's respect. Goes in the auxiliary room, like puts on the tuxedo shirt. He's like, and also bleep Arkansas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it is a little bit different. And that's why, quite frankly, I like being able to do one-on-one type interviews and stuff like that. Sometimes you finish a press conference and you think to yourself, can I just have those 30 minutes of my life back?
Yeah.
That just didn't do much of anything for me. But yeah, getting some of these individual moments with players, I still really enjoy. I loved getting to talk with Luther Burden.
Yeah. Wait, really quick, where I was going with that with Billy is almost like for Billy's thing to work, he's always been said as like almost an irrational confidence guy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's always like, wow, he's a leader of men. Like, he inspires the guy. You want to run through a tunnel for Billy Napier. And I think he made a calculated decision, a la Beamer, who's another guy that's been, pretty like, had the quotes, had the energy, where it's like, I'm kind of a little bit, I am on the hot seat if you're Napier. It's like, I don't want to lose the job. I don't want to lose. I don't want to commit a turnover here. But I feel like I wanted Billy to come up there and be like, you don't even know what's coming for you. Like, the guys in this locker room, you know what I'm saying? Because that's his thing.
I don't know. I kind of would have pushed back on that. I would have said,
they look
that feels
sad,
like,
man.
That feels...
The whole team
know.
just looks sad.
But,
like, they look like they were like, don't ask us about the schedule again.
But that would have felt like false confidence.
Right.
You can't do that
with
in this
that
conference.
schedule, you gotta Alabama, Texas.
Do that internally. Do that internally. Don't
Yeah.
do that externally when you lose 5 in a row to end the season to miss out on a bowl game. You just can't do that. And I do think some of these coaches do try and think about how they're going to come off.
Yeah.
I thought Drink this year was different than I expected him to be. I thought he was going to be the brash, confident guy, like he was trying to sell us on something. And he really wasn't. I thought Drink was a lot more subdued. I don't think he was wearing Jordans this year. He's worn Jordans every single year. He's wearing black dress shoes. Like, I guess this is the button-up version of Drink. But yeah, you're right. It didn't feel like Billy was coming out guns blazing, ready to go, trying to sell you on the vision. Maybe there were certain elements where he's trying to sell you on the vision of his program, but not necessarily in a brash way, because it doesn't really have the leg to stand on to be able to do that.
Yeah. Totally agree. You're talking about Luther Burden.
Yeah. No, I think that Luther Burden had the mindset that I hoped he would have.
Yep.
Which was that of STP, which was, wow, why am I blanking on what STP stood for?
Stone Temple Pilots.
Not that. Show them something. No, that's not it. Whatever. There's a mantra that he kept coming back to over and over and over, and it's not that he feels like Mizzou is being disrespected or anything like that, but he talked about his game, specifically himself in the new video game in College Football 25, and I asked him what he thought of his rating. He's like, average, just average. I said, did you think you were going to be a top 10 player? He's like, definitely. Mind you, he was 11th. He's like top 10, top 5. I don't care. That guy is confident. It shows. I totally understand why he had this magnetic personality the way that he did. He was asked about the Auburn game 2 years ago, his freshman year, where he deletes all mentions of Mizzou off his social media. And it was this turning point he talked about and how different things are now compared to then. And he admitted, he took that personally. And the way that he was used that game, I always thought the drink explanation afterwards of him having a hamstring injury was BS because we saw the snap count. He was out there for punt return and stuff.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a strange explanation. But he comes into this now having all the confidence in the world. And I'm not looking at him as a guy that should lack any confidence whatsoever. If I were Luther Burden, I would hope to be as confident as he is.
Yeah, I already liked him a ton. He's in the early running for just lad of the year in the SEC. The way that he answered questions, you talked about the EA video game where he's like, okay, I took that personally. I think you talked about, was it him? Someone was asking about Nick Harbor. He's the guy with 99 speed of the EA video game.
Yeah. He's he was asked who's the most athletic person in the SEC.
Yeah.
I think it was a question, if I recall, I think Nick Kelly was the one who was asking that question to a bunch of people, a bunch of players. And he's like, the dude with 99 speed. And he's like, he's huge. And I said, I chimed up. I was like, Nick Harbor. That's what you're talking about. It's that's kind of unmistakable.
Yeah, I love that. Especially from a receiver that's not as physically imposing. He's not Megatron. He's not 6'6". He's a little bit, 5'11", 5'10", whatever. And to be a big presence like that, you sit there, he looks you in the eyes. It's oh, this guy's a game changer. To him, he's 7 feet tall. He's got a giant gold chain on in his mind. He's ready to go, shock the world. And, that's what you need at Mizzou, especially without a guy like Schrader. Yeah.
Yeah, and Brady Cook as well came across really, really well. He currently has a significant leg up on Luther Burden in the video game department. But he talks about how the faith that the coaching staff put in him after the start of last season was huge. That was what turned around everything for him. Just being able to not have to worry about is he going to lose his job with every throw that he makes after the second or third game of the year. Having that buy-in from the coaching staff, he was finally able to exhale and realize I have a golden opportunity on my hands. The Kirby Moore factor as well, 1-1 in the coordinator draft, probably played a part in that. But I feel almost bad not putting Mizzou into the playoff, because I think Mizzou deserves to start in the top 10, but I don't think they will make the playoff. I have no problem whatsoever with them starting off 8 or 9 or 10 or something like that, and also acknowledging the hurdles that they potentially face on the defensive side of the ball, which is something that Drink addressed head on. But it is the thing that's holding me back. This is a throwback Marler with sirens in the background. It's been a minute since we had the real sirens going. How about that?
Yeah.
The Drink bravado, brashness. The only time we got the brash version of Drink was when he talked about being on the hot seat last year. He's like, I don't think anybody said I was going to get fired. Well, except for Dennis Dodd.
Just stared at him.
Just stared right at him. Dennis Dodd, the Cardinal fan. But any other takeaways from the first 3 days of media days? We have, by the way, I didn't even say at the top, hopefully you read the description, we've got Todd Gurley coming up, no big deal. Might have heard of him. We got Todd Gurley coming up.
So fire.
In a second here.
Just interviewed Todd Gurley.
Forgot about it. There's been a lot going on. We got Todd Gurley coming up, and then we're going to do some spin it forward to the teams that we got in action on Thursday, and maybe some all SEC stuff we'll do a little bit. But any other takeaways from the first 3 days so far?
I should have brought this up earlier than I meant to. I was kind of I put the thoughts in reverse earlier. Quinn Ewers had a quote earlier. I need to go find it. That was
One of the best football guy quotes I've ever heard. Someone asked him how he stayed grounded, and he was like, I lean on my faith, I lean on Jesus Christ. And he's like, the Lord has put calluses on my brain and spirit to protect me from that.
Calluses on the brain and spirit. All right.
That was a fire. I was like, okay, you make me want to go to church, man. That was cool. Yeah,
I just think just overall, I don't know. I think everybody was about what I expected them to be. I think that's a good point that you made about the size of the event. People, people just trying to not lose the press conference. I don't think there was anybody. Honestly, man, two people that impress me were Sarkisian and Kalen DeBoer. I think that, as annoying as I think Sarkisian probably had the best. Like, when you think about the amount of pressure on him, he walked up, welcome to Dallas, everyone. I just want to say that, like, that was really cool, talking about the Red River rivalry. It's hard to say. I need to practice saying
Red River rivalry. Yeah.
That's like a tongue twister, like a sobriety test. Anyway, so, yeah, I think I think that's the part of it, is that, like, okay, when I was 2012, I was in high school for that. And I remember hearing, like, A&M and Mizzou were coming to the SEC, and I was like, I just don't get it. Like, I just didn't understand why those specific two teams. And I think for Mizzou, they proved it almost immediately, right? They won the East back-to-back in year 2 and 3. For A&M, probably took, Manziel showed up.
It was first year, yeah.
Yep. So boom, that was pretty quick. But then kind of, since then it's not stayed there. But they on the field were able to prove themselves. I think that I don't think I was nervous about these additions, but I am much more excited than I was. Not to dump on anyone's brands or anything, but there could have been a way that in Dallas, the way that Oklahoma fans kind of talk about Texas, they had lots of opportunity to show their butts today, and I don't think they did that. I think they represent themselves well. I think everyone's happy and excited to be part of the conference. Texas and Oklahoma still hate each other. I love that. Yeah. And so, yeah, I just feel like it feels like, you're meeting some, like, extended cousins you met on Ancestry.com. You're like, oh, we get the same, like, nose, ears. Okay, yeah. Cool, man.
It would have been strange if one of those teams had come into the league with a coach in really questionable standing. Like, really questionable standing.
Yeah.
And if one of those programs had vibes similar to what we were just talking about with Florida or something like that,
yeah,
it would have definitely taken some of the the allure off of it.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that both programs very much feel like they are on the rise and about to do even bigger and better things, I think certainly adds to the intrigue, adds to the excitement during talking season. That's all it is. That's all it is, talking season. Okay. Let's kick it to Todd Gurley, guy you might have heard of, certain former Georgia star. Got to be able to catch up with him and talk about being 10 years removed from that just totally bogus suspension and NIL, what that's like to be involved or to look at that from afar now, and as well what he's doing with Bushes. So let's kick it to Todd Gurley. All right, now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is the one and only Todd Gurley, who is here on behalf of Bush's Baked Beans. We got the cans right here set up, perfect little spot for him. Todd, tell us about the fine work you're doing with Bush's.
Yeah, man, obviously out here on behalf of Bush's Grillin Beans, the official beans of SEC. It's their third year going into partnership with the SEC, so big griller, man, and obviously being a former Georgia player and being able to partner with Bush's Grillin Beans, it's been dope, man. It's been super cool. They had me out here talking out here at SEC Media Day, reliving my old playing days. So a lot of good questions, a lot of great interviews. So I appreciate everybody for the conversations, but then also the great interview as well. So like I said, out here on behalf of Bush's Grillin Beans, they give a lot of bold flavors. I love to grill. Lamb, chicken, brats, burgers, and they provide a good source of plant-based protein for me. So being able to be out here, like I said, on behalf of them, it's been cool, man. It's been a hell of a run, going around talking to different people, different schools, and just talking ball.
It's crazy to think that if you were in college, Bush's would have been an NIL deal. Have you kind of thought about what that's like to go back and look at what a potential partnership would have been?
Maybe, but but that's the blessing of it too, right? Like, they could have picked anybody, but out of everybody, they picked me. So just being able to be honored, and they could have went ahead and got them a Georgia player or got them a Tennessee player, because obviously home base is Tennessee. So I don't really think about like what could have been, and vice versa. I'm pretty blessed, and God did me very well, so I try not to live in that life, and what you would have made this year. So just easy going for real for me.
You're 10 years removed from like all that playing out, and that's got to feel like it's a tough pill to swallow. Like, I can see it in your face.
Nah, time flies, man. Time flies. It's been a hell of a ride and a fun journey, but looking back at it, just try to appreciate the time, especially like being here. And a lot of the players been losing their life at young ages, so you just put that in perspective. And being a new dad now, and just wanting to just be here for my daughter, but then also just grow and develop and just help other guys develop and grow as they lead the game too. So, but yeah, man, wow, yeah. Looking back at it, it's been 10 years. Does
it feel like that long ago that you were at Georgia, and now seeing the program where it's at now, where they're trying to win 3 and 4 years, man? Like, could you even imagine being in that spot and like knowing the pressure that this team is going through? It feels like Georgia has turned such a new leaf since you've been there. No,
it's been good, but honestly, as the players, I don't know, man. I'm not in that position or that situation, but I think Kirby does a great job of demanding, greatness out of those players, and building up talent and developing talent, and just a winner. Just a winner. That's what he does. That's what he's been doing these last 8 years that he's been there, and as a former player and just a fan of Georgia, it's just a good feeling just to like see it. But also, like, when you get the win and you kind of take all that stuff for granted, right? Like, you're like, oh yeah, we're gonna win it, but that's not necessarily the case. All it takes is that one loss, and that can get you out of the playoffs. And I think last year was a lesson learned, not only for Dog fans but just for the players as well. So that's just been a good feeling.
How much more appreciation do you have for college football after the way that your career went? Like, when you miss games and you like have to just be on the sideline, whether it's injury, like whatever happens, do you look back on that now and wish, like, man, I wish I could just have a year back to be able to play college football?
Oh, nah, not at all. Definitely not at all. But no, now I look back at it, because I'm like, I got hurt my freshman year. I pretty much played every game. And then my sophomore year, I think I missed like 4 games. But, I guess when you do look back at it, it's more just like, man, it really wasn't that much. But it was like, because I really wasn't there that long. I felt like I was only there like 2.5 years, literally from summer of 2012 to I was pretty much gone after December in 2014. So, you just got to embrace it. But I just tell guys, just have fun, man. Have fun and live it up and live those memories.
What advice would you give guys besides just savor the moment? Anything can be related to, financial literacy, like, get a dietitian. Like, look, what's the one piece of advice that you look back on now and you would give these guys who are stepping up to the stage here representing Georgia?
Yeah, I would. See, it's like, It's funny you say that, because, like, I guess the mindset that I have now would technically should be the mindset I had when I was playing, but I was young, I was youthful, so, like, have fun, live life, and, like, not really, you're young, right? You're not taking the health stuff, like, too serious, but I would just say try to mature, a lot earlier, but then also try to learn from lessons, but learn from others as well. So that financial literacy part, that's real. That's why I do like the NIL, but it's like half and half with me, because I'm like, man, I just want guys to be able to take care of themselves, and hopefully they're able to take care of their family. But first, you just need to set yourself up, and just think new ways, right, as far as business wise. What you stand for, whatever your value is. So it's a lot that's going on, and take care of your money, take care of your mind, and don't try to take life too serious, right? Like, it's a blessing, man. You're playing college football at the highest level. You're winning. I know it gets stressful sometimes, and, you might put a lot of pressure on you, but at the end of the day, man, you're playing in your childhood dream, like, to go from playing in the backyard to literally playing in front of 100,000 people. Like, just take that for what it is and just keep growing.
I had your boy Keith Marshall on a couple years ago. He said not only can he beat you in a race, but that he could beat Gurshall in a race.
Yeah, Keith was fast, man. Keith was fast. Yeah, he did beat me in the race, because We were I made like Olympic team, and
As one does.
but I did the hurdles. So I would say this just to defend myself. I never ran 100 without running the hurdles right before. But you let them tell it, they're going to be like, oh, you should be warmed up. But, yeah, Keith was always fast, man. He always just was like blazing speed. Even after injury, he'll just come back like still fast, yeah.
I think Georgia fans wanted more of Gurshall. They wanted Gurshall was such a great little time. Like how nostalgic do you like feel like those days are for you?
Oh, it was funny, yo. Just how because I was 3 and he was 4, and it's funny how they get so creative, right, and just make that. And obviously we pretty much had like 1 year together, because after that it was like either I was hurt or he was hurt, but the blessing on that side, right? Like y'all got to see the transition of Chubb and Sony, and so this is always good that come out of it too.
I got a couple rapid fire for you here before we get you out of here. Toughest place you ever played in on the road while you were at Georgia?
I would say South Carolina, because I lost there twice, so kind of ready to go with that one.
Best touchdown of your career was what?
Best touchdown. Oh, it got to be that kickoff return. I would say my first touchdown, but it was my kickoff return against Buffalo. Like that started it for me. Like, yeah, that was like, who is this dude? Like, oh, we might have something.
That was the correct answer. You didn't know that was yeah. And last one for you: will Georgia win a national championship this year?
That is not for me to say, but with Carson Beck and the Kirby, the sky is the limit. But, I'm always rooting for the Dogs, and, I don't know. I had to check out a couple of games first, I don't just speak sometimes just to speak, but, I'm sure Kirby will have our guys right and put us in a great position and, have us definitely in a position to win. So I definitely see that.
Todd, on behalf of Bush's, appreciate everything that you're doing and looking forward to hopefully seeing you around the SEC, man.
Yeah, man, I'm definitely looking forward to getting back, just having these conversations, and appreciate you for the good interview, and, the memories floating in my brain, and, it definitely was an exciting time being at Georgia, so thank y'all.
Thanks, man. All right, well, the final day of SEC Media Days, I hate to be Debbie Downer, a buzzkill. It's tough. It's gonna be a tough scene for the amount of people that have been here and the amount of people that will filter out because you gotta catch flights and do all that stuff. But it'll be difficult, I think, for the likes of Auburn and Arkansas and Kentucky and Texas A&M, because none of them feel quite like what Tuesday felt like, where it was 4 teams legitimately in the 12-team playoff hunt discussion, however you want to call it. And these 4 teams on this last day, not necessarily a coincidence, are more on the outside of that conversation. So I feel bad for those programs. I always feel bad for the Thursday programs. I always do. It's a tough look, but I don't necessarily have the highest of expectations. Maybe that just means we're set up to get the best quotes that we've had all week.
Oh, dude, I think this is... I'm so fascinated to see who set this schedule, how they figured all this out, because I think there's a situation where everybody wins, right? Because I was talking about like the Tri-Wizard tournament, like these big programs like Kalen DeBoer walking out and being like, I am from Alabama. And it's like, wow, which one of those 4 coaches do you think like wants to be here?
That's a good point.
I think this is perfect. They would rather have an empty room. They would do COVID rules and have nobody asking them questions.
No, I think Sam Pittman's fine with it. I think he's perfectly fine in his own skin.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily
he
think...
has fun, but remember, he's so on the hot seat.
I know, but at the same time,
yeah.
I don't know that Pittman is going to get grilled in the same way that a lot of others would be, kind of on the hot seat.
People like him, yeah.
Yeah, because I think people like him more. He's very comfortable in his own skin. I think he's kind of an extrovert, whereas... I think Elko has a vision to sell with his program, but at the same time, if you told Mike Elko, hey, you can just go watch film for an hour instead of doing this, he'd be like, yes, I'll watch 5 hours of film instead of doing this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and Stoops, of course,
he brought all it to your life.
Yeah.
As did April, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Hopefully, we're going to be able to get. I'm trying to get Deion Walker on for next week, so hopefully we'll be able to do that. TBD. It's very difficult to be able to get these guys player interviews for the way that we kind of set it up off to the side and stuff, not just in like a media scrum and whatnot, or even some of the Radio Row stuff is difficult when there's 6 minutes or 7 minutes and then there's somebody just saying like, hey, finish, last question. I hate that. That's why I don't do all of that. If you're wondering why I don't do 30 interviews while we're here, I used to try and do that.
Yeah.
And then I thought, maybe we don't. We do have an interview coming up with Jordan Rodgers that'll be out next week as well. Great to be able to catch up with him in person, as we always do at Media Days. But only other thing that I wanted to ask you about, all SEC ballot.
Need to do that.
Need to fill it out. Classic Thursday afternoon activity.
Yep.
I am pre-mad about the transfers and about the Texas and Oklahoma guys that will not be included on first and second team. I think like Kelvin Banks is going to be fine. I think Quinn Ewers will probably be a second team All-SEC guy if I had to guess. But I am pre-mad about some of those snubs of like a Nick Anderson not necessarily getting that love, or if we're talking about Danny Stutzman not as a first team All-SEC guy, it's like what are we doing? This guy's preseason All-American. Like this shouldn't necessarily be the case. But I am pre-mad about that, and I might just, I don't want to say overcompensate on my ballot, but I will make note of that and make sure that I am not part of the problem.
Yeah, I think on a related note, I haven't done this. I actually don't remember the last time I did a ballot because I was there, but I was like a media member. The last time I think it was like 17. But I think the way to do this, right, is I pick Alabama and Georgia, and then I get mad at them for not living up to those expectations. That's what I'm going to do.
Please don't default to Alabama and Georgia for all your lineman picks. Parker Brailsford's worthy, though, even as a transfer who's going to Bama because of what he did at Washington, and somebody that should greatly help the interior of that offensive line.
Yep.
But I do think that there will be a lot of those snubs that are frustrating, and I get it. It's tougher now because there are 16 teams. It's difficult to be able to figure out this, depth charts and stuff like that. I think running back is going to be just a total crapshoot. Somebody pointed out to Montreal Johnson today, you're the first running back of the week that's been here. Isn't that crazy?
It's great. This Montreal Johnson, dude. That's Billy's guy.
Yeah.
That's actually so wild, dude. Are there any tomorrow?
That's a good question.
What happened to the position I used to love?
That's right. It's so weird. It is so weird. We talked about that when we did which SEC running back will lead the conference in rushing, and it's strange. The turnover is so significant when Judkins leaves and Etienne goes from Florida to Georgia. Not that Etienne was like a top 5 rusher or anything, but there's so much turnover at that position. So that's going to be difficult. There's probably going to be weird snubs there. We'll probably do something on the pod about this next week to be able to talk about all SEC snubs.
Is there any one specific player that you can almost guarantee will get snubbed, like a guy that just to watch out for that's not going to get it?
It's a good question.
And while you think about that, I'm going to say last year it was old boy from Arkansas, the interior lineman, which it turns out...
Bo Limmer?
Turns out they were right.
Yeah.
I don't know about him specifically, just the line in general.
Yeah.
He didn't make it back to the end of the year to you.
Yeah, like Landon Jackson's, if we're talking Arkansas, Landon Jackson's a guy that shouldn't be left off, but maybe he will because he's, a smaller school guy. Like that's the type of stuff that always gets me. Like somebody probably, there's like 3 all SEC teams and CJ Taylor's not going to be on one of them or something like that, even though he's good enough to be, even though he's at Vandy. I don't know, a quarterback, everybody's going to feel like they're getting snubbed. We've talked about that. It's potentially the best year of preseason hype for SEC quarterbacks since 2013, and maybe even more depth than them, but definitely more star power in 2013. So, yeah, I do think that snubs will be had, and there will be more discussion about them because the league is bigger and they added so much more talent.
I don't think that human beings, and especially not human beings that aren't like doctors or lawyers, are meant to retain this amount of information.
Yeah.
I think
14 was kind of the outer limit of my brain. Thank God for Vandy, not to be mean, but like not a lot I got to worry about there. I am sitting here like, I mean, it's crazy because like to the point about Thursday, it's like I'm so glad that those teams are kind of not flashy trying to make a headline teams, because I'm trying to remember like who's on every team, who said what, who went on which days in what order. And so like, yeah, the concept of having to pick favorites between that many players.
It's a blur, man.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it now. Nick Scorton's going to be the guy who's going to get left off all
That's
SEC.
a good one.
He's going to get left off first team, and I'm going to be really mad about it. If Deion Walker gets left off first team all SEC, we're going rage mode, because that would just be an insane thing. I don't think that'll happen.
Who's the first team running back? Was it Montreal Johnson?
The first team running back could be Montreal Johnson. See, the difficult thing is I probably won't. I think CJ Baxter is going to lead the conference in rushing. But there's a difference with doing the projection. We've talked about this before versus what's legitimately a preseason honor, right? Because I think more of that should just be based on what you've done so far, what the player that you are if you stepped onto the football field tomorrow. But that's a really good question, man. I think there's a really good chance that Montreal Johnson will be that guy. Guys, who else? I don't think Rocket Sanders is going to get it because of the injuries.
Yeah. He already kind of had that year last year where everybody predicted big things out of him, and it just didn't really come true.
Yeah, so I don't think he's going to necessarily get it either. I bet Justice Haynes will be part of that conversation as well, just because Bama running back, why wouldn't he be?
Yeah.
The guy who's probably going to get it is Jarquez Hunter. I bet Jarquez Hunter will be the first team All-SEC running back.
He is so Johnson is. I'm with you there because he's such a high usage guy. He's a safe pick. So I think guys will think of him and be like, okay, he'll get the touches. That's the only thing about Hunter is that he's a little bit. And I think he's going to have more of a.
I think he will too
this year. Yeah.
Yeah. He had a weird offseason last year. Obviously, we don't need to get into that. He's probably the best bet to be the first team guy. I think he's going to be there with Auburn. I think he will be there, so we will have more running back representation.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the key. We're not really forgetting guys. This is just kind of weirdly right now preseason, kind of a down year for running back. Okay,
very much. This is not 2015. This is not 2015. Needless to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a wrap for Media Days. We probably won't be doing an in-person pod for a long time, which is sad. Love being able to do in-person pods.
It's fun, man.
Shout out to you for this luxurious setup that we got. This makeshift.
It looks like a literal tornado came here as soon as that eye line stops. But that's my job, you know.
Thank God that's off camera. Yeah,
I'm making Connor uncomfortable with my mess, but just know I donated my room. Here we are, for the team.
Exactly, our podcast studio, aka Wolf's bedroom. But yes, follow all of our coverage. SaturdayDownSouth.com. Lots and lots of great stuff coming out. Derek's been doing awesome work for us. Matt Hayes has our entire news team. Just so much work that's been done this week. We've got some karaoke to go do tonight.
Yeah.
Hopefully by the time people are listening to this, I will have crushed it. My karaoke will probably be on the internet somewhere for people to be able to see. Pray for your boy. Pray for your boy. It'll be good. Year 3 of this. All right, well, if you have not, leave us a 5-star review. You should subscribe to the Saturday Down South YouTube channel where you can watch all of our great content. We even throw up like being on Feinbaum the other day, and we include stuff like that. We're trying to do more of that as well. So subscribe to the Saturday Down South YouTube channel, and then follow us on Twitter at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard, at the SDS Pod, at Set Down South. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.